arms getting in there.
Okay, let me give the floor to Mr. Icebreaker because I know he had a reaction. Mr. Icebreaker, go ahead.
I think it's hilarious that Mr. Korb thinks that those homemade rockets that the resistance in Gaza are firing cost $1 million each. Mr. Korb, you should know better how much it costs to produce missiles and rockets. After all, your former employer, Raytheon, produces the Sidewinder. And as I believe last week that the U.S. Congress just voted to give Israel the right to buy another $544 million of your company's Sidewinders. And I actually wonder, as we're sitting here, I know it's not really the focus of discussion, I wonder what your dividends are when Raytheon makes that kind of a sale. The point is that
I got fired by Raytheon. Wait a second. Wait a second here. Wait a second. Wait a second. Okay. Okay.
Let's allow Mr. Korb to respond.
I worked for Raytheon for 3 months, and I got fired because I didn't agree with their policies. So don't be going after me. Stick to the issues here.
All right. Fair enough. Mr. Icebreaker, go ahead.
Well, you did work for Raytheon, so you should know what missiles cost.
3 months, and I got fired by them because Hamas, I disagree. And I don't get any dividends from them. Fact, why are you talking about my getting dividends?
Make your point before.
Why are you talking about
now
that?
You let me continue, please, sir. I let you make your point before. Now, please let me continue. The reason I raise this is because in the United States, what the anti-war and solidarity movement is doing is we are trying to educate the American people that it's not just Israel that is slaughtering the Palestinians, that the United States government and the weapons manufacturers, Boeing, headquartered here in Chicago. I was arrested last week at the Boeing headquarters in a protest with other leaders of the solidarity movement because Boeing provides Israel with the F-16s, with the Apaches, and with the smart bombs that they use for killing little boys on the beach in Gaza. So all of these things are to say that the United States is backing this war, while on the other hand, I believe the resistance has the support of all the people of Palestine in the West Bank.
Okay, I want to give Mr. Korb a chance to respond. I can see he's itching to respond. Mr. Korb, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, the United States, the military assistance they give to Israel and Egypt is a result of the peace accord back in the late 70s. So they give it to both sides. It's not a question of arming one or the other. And the United States also provides arms to other Arab countries like Saudi Arabia. That's a whole different issue. If you want to talk about that, that's not the issue. The issue here is who started it, okay? And these rockets are not homemade. They've gotten them from Iran, for example. These are very sophisticated rockets that are getting through, okay? And
Mr. Korb, I do apologize for coming in, but I just want to ask, according to international law, as Mr. Icebreaker mentioned earlier, Gazans and Palestinians are an occupied people. So when an occupied people defends themselves against the occupier, that's not really called attacking them, is it?
No, they're not an occupied people, okay? Okay? Hamas is running the place there, all right? So they're not occupied. Hamas broke off from the Palestinian Authority, which has supposedly have power over all of it. The Palestinian Security Force wanted to provide protection in Gaza, and Hamas said no. So it's not a question of being... the reason that the borders are cut off, Egypt cut it off, is because they were smuggling in arms. And, here's the thing. They're getting support right now because of these horrible human casualties, which everybody doesn't like. But the fact of the matter is, Hamas has lost support from Egypt. They've lost support from Assad in Syria. They've also lost support from Iran compared to where they were a couple of years ago. So they were desperate to do something. That's what triggered this whole thing.
Or Mr. Icebreaker, go ahead. Mr. Korb, they're describing, Gazans not as occupied.
Well, it's a myth that the Israelis propagate, and the Zionists here as well. I'm quite familiar with colonial myths, having grown up in the great Midwest of the United States. and having learned that it was the peaceful European civilization that came across the country and saved it from the brutal Indians. The truth of the matter is, in the United States, is that the European colonialists carried out genocide of the people of the indigenous people here, and the Israelis are carrying out a genocidal war against the people of Palestine. Israel has never lived up to any of the agreements with the Palestinians. They seized more land in '48 than was in the UN map. They took the rest of Palestine in '67. And today, in the West Bank, they have constructed settlements and walls that make it would be generous to call the West Bank a Bantustan. The Israelis have created an apartheid regime that they enforce in the West Bank, and in Gaza, they have turned the entire country into a prison, an open-air prison. Israel controls the vast majority of the border with Gaza, and if you haven't looked at a map lately, Mr. Korb, I'd recommend that you do that now. Egypt controls one piece, but Israel controls the rest of it. And finally, we go back to our starting point. The world recognizes Palestine as a nation occupied by the Israeli military and by the state.
Indeed,
of Israel.
And Mr. Eisbacher, I want to pick up on that last point of yours, and I'll allow you to respond to everything that Mr. Eisbacher there said, Mr. Korb, but I want to throw this in there as well, that it's not just the world that recognizes Palestine as being occupied, but Jews themselves. We have many peace organizations such as Jewish Voice for Peace. We have writers such as Gideon Levy within Israel themselves, Israeli Jews themselves actually, organizations such as Bet Salam, saying that this is all occupied land. When your traditional support base begins questioning what you're doing, isn't that a sign of trouble?
Well, let's go back and look at the history. Israel was recognized by the United Nations. The first country to recognize it was the Soviet Union, not the United States. All right? Then they were attacked by the Palestinians and you had a war. They settled it and they ended up with more territory than they had started with because they were attacked. In '67, you had 6 countries surrounded, ready to get rid of it, led by Egypt. You had President Clinton in 2000 had an agreement with the Israelis to go back, give them back to the '67 borders with land swaps. Yasser Arafat turned it down. In 2007, Ehud Olmert had the same type of agreement. They turned it down. So the question really is, why do they keep turning down these deals that are offered to them? And yes, there are people who want these deals to happen. They want a 2-state solution. That's the key. Everybody recognizes that. But Hamas is not helping it because of the things that they are doing. And it's interesting here in terms of the Israelis allow one border opening, but the others, they got tunnels that go under God and they come out in Israel and they kill people. They captured an Israeli soldier that they held for 6 years. So what should they do? Just allow this to happen?
Interesting. I want to put that to you then, Mr. Eisbacher. Do you have a response to that?
Well, apparently Israel has already answered that question, because what they're doing is they've slaughtered 850 people, the vast majority of them, 80% of them civilians, 200 children. They're bombing hospitals, and they've maintained an occupation of Palestine for all these years. I think that it's a myth that Israel has been unfairly treated or that the Palestinians haven't been partners. In fact, I want to go back to my original point. What I'm for and what I believe the people of Palestine want is justice. And for example, international law recognizes the right of return, not just to return to an area near where you were expelled militarily, as the Palestinians were expelled militarily by the Zionist terrorists in 1948. They don't have the right just to return to the west bank of the Jordan River. They have a right to return to where they lived. And I think actually that Israel's actions right now are so desperate because Israel is facing this. There is no support in the world for a two-state solution because Israel is not a reliable partner. They violate every agreement that they have made with the Palestinians. They told the Palestinians there would be no settlements, and here they have hundreds of thousands of right-wing settlers living on Palestinian land, even the land that Israel recognizes as Palestinian land. No, the people of Palestine have been given no choice by the Israeli occupation other than to resist. And any government that gives away their right to resist, or any association, any group of parties that claims to speak for them and gives away their right to return, will not be popular organizations.
Okay, and on that point, I'll have to interrupt you, Mr. Eisbacher, but of course we do appreciate your insight. We'll unfortunately run out of time, and of course I'd like to continue this discussion on a later date as well. Of course, that was Joe Eisbacher speaking to us live from Chicago. He's with the United National Anti-War Committee, and we were also joined by the U.S. foreign policy and national security analyst, Mr. Lawrence Korb, who is speaking to us live from Washington. Mr. Korb, we do appreciate you spending your time and speaking to us as well. And viewers, thanks very much for watching us here on Press TV's The Debate. Thanks again.